So this is the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, and I rated this the best phone of 2023. And it's for very good reason, you know? Like, even today, where it still stands, it just feels like it hasn't aged. And I think that's really important when you buy a phone. You want your phone to still feel fresh a year later, because most of us are keeping our devices for 3 years, sometimes even more. I think it looks just as good when it first came out. It doesn't look like an iPhone, it doesn't look like a Pixel, and yes, you could argue that it's just one big rectangular slab, but it still has its own identity. And quite frankly, they didn't really change a lot compared to the regular S22 Ultra. In fact, the only real big design change was that the curved edges on the sides of the display have been reduced ever so slightly. If you're considering this phone right now, I'm going to say what I said in the beginning. This is a big device. Like, you need to want to use a big phone. But look, after a year, it's been holding up pretty well. I will say I haven't been using this straight for a year. It's been on and off. I don't want to mislead anybody watching this video, but every time I go back to it, I look at it and I'm like, this phone is just so good. Now, there are a couple of scratches on the display. It's hard to see with the light shining on it, but there's a couple of scratches over here. This is Gorilla Glass Victus 2. It is holding up. I mean, after a year, you are going to get micro scratches on any display unless you're using some sort of screen protector. The device itself is very heavy. It does take some time to get used to, and every time I put it away and pick it back up, there's sort of like a transition period, you know? And then every time I pick up a small phone again, my hands have like multiple orgasms because those smaller devices just, you know, feel good in a hand regardless. The thing I like about this design is that the back of the phone repels fingerprints beautifully. I don't think I've ever wiped this thing down and it just looks clean. You will get smudges on the armor aluminum frame on the sides of the phone, but because this is more of the white color, it's a lot harder to see. The one thing I will say though is that fingerprints on the display do show up a little bit more compared to the beginning. The oleophobic coating on the front display tends to wear off as time goes on. So the more you use your phone, the more smudges tend to get stuck to it, which means you have to clean it every so often. The pen has been great. Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a pen person. Like, I've probably used this 5 or 6 times, but it's there whenever I need it, especially if I have to like quickly jot down a phone number or some sort of directions. I know I can always rely on it. It feels so good because the high refresh rate on the display, the low latency, it just makes it a very good writing experience. And if you really like haptic feedback, the haptic feedback on this phone when you're typing on it is amazing. In fact, I usually turn all that stuff off, but I know a lot of people love it, and the motor inside of here is really, really good. But the one thing that continues to impress me about this device is the display. Like, this is a 6.8-inch display, and every time I look at it, I am just blown away by the colors. It's no longer the brightest display on the market. There are other phones that have brighter displays. You take something like the OnePlus Open, for example, that's pushing over 2000 nits of peak brightness. This is 1750, but because it's using a proper glass panel, everything looks a lot more vibrant. It just gives you the perception that this display is brighter than everything else. And sometimes I ask myself, why am I even using a foldable phone? You know, like when I use the OnePlus Open or a Galaxy Z Fold 5, you know, the display is bigger when it is open, but it's not that much bigger. And it's like, do I need to carry this fold, or should I just do everything on this one display instead of having to go use the front and then the inner display when I want bigger content? The speakers are great. They're not the best speakers. I still personally feel like the iPhone 15 Pro Max does have better speakers, but the speakers on this sound really, really good. And I love the fact that Samsung continues to slightly oversaturate the colors on the screen. I know you can change it, but I personally feel like it just gives you that extra oomph. Like, it just keeps you wanting to use this display compared to other devices on the market. Now, I've seen countless comments about Samsung phones getting slower after a year. I mean, those days are kind of over, unless you're buying like, you know, a budget phone with an older processor, then that kind of happens. But this thing has never slowed down. Like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 inside of here is ridiculously fast. Yes, it can get a little warm during long periods of use or playing games, but not nearly as bad as the Pixel smartphones. Like it's just your standard warmth, like no different than an iPhone, no different than other competing smartphones on the market. In fact, it is so good that I feel like if you're looking for a gaming phone on the Android side, this kind of like fits all of those checks boxes. Big display, good speakers, excellent performance, and it doesn't get super hot. This phone is gonna feel just as fast over the next few years. So if you bought this to keep this for a very long time, I think you're gonna enjoy the performance on it. But the one thing that has aged like a fine wine is the camera experience. Like when this phone first came out, the computational photography needed to be tightened up. Like I was comparing it to the iPhone at the time, and pictures overall were very good. It would just keep you guessing, like it just didn't feel as consistent. But now that it's had a lot more software updates, a lot more options to download specific applications to improve the experience, this is like one of the best cameras you can get on the Android side of things right now. And it's just the versatility of the cameras that I enjoy. Like there's 100 times zoom, which is kind of gimmicky, but useful in some situations. Like if I need to see something in a far distance, I can rely on it. But I'm not sitting there asking a person 100 times away to line up for a portrait shot. 30 times zoom is getting much better. I feel like in the next couple of generations of Galaxy devices, it's actually going to be pretty good, but anything 10 times and under looks really great on this phone. I love the fact that there's a lot of different applications that you can download to really take advantage of these cameras. Even Samsung's Expert RAW on their store provides such good utility. Like I can use the camera to take a raw photo, bring it into Lightroom, and change the colors to exactly how I want. The 8K video, I don't use that often. The only time I might jump into 8K video is if it's on like a perfectly, and I mean perfectly sunny day, and I want to be able to crop in a little bit. That's when I might use 8K video, but most of the time I'm leaving it on 4K 30. The other thing is you have an ND filter baked into the RAW camera app, which is really cool, something you just don't get on other phones. And if you download apps like Motion Zoom or other applications on the Google Play Store, you can take advantage of RAW video using the DNG extension. But battery life has been fantastic. Like I never have to worry about getting through the entire day. Like I'm not a super heavy user. I'm like a light to medium user, and I always finish the day with like 65, 70% battery life. And the days that I do go heavy, it never goes below 40. Like I don't have to worry about ever charging my phone. And if I don't use this device that often, the idle time is incredible. Does it have the best battery life in a phone? No, but it's very darn close. And it should, considering that there's a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Now the wire charging is only 45 watts. Personally, I don't care. Like I always charge my phone at night. Usually I'm using the 15 watt wireless charging, so it's doing it slowly. But some people do care about faster wire charging, and this phone's just not going to give that to you. But 45 is more than enough for me. But the one thing that I really loved is the new software experience you get with One UI 6.0. Like I just love the look of this. They've made a few nice changes to it. The first one is that the fonts are a little bit nicer. They're a little bit more cleaner. You have more options now with the quick panel. When you swipe down, there's more information that you can utilize. Also, the customization of it is much better. I do like the fact that you have this more animated video control or music control. We've seen this on the Pixel phones. Samsung's bringing it to their Ultra lineup using Android 14. But yeah, it's just a very good looking update. One UI has come a long way, and it's one of the better Android themes that are currently out there. Now, as for Dex, I haven't really used it, but knowing the fact that I could always turn my phone into a proper desktop experience is kind of cool, and I think that's kind of the moral of the story with this phone. It has everything. Everything. Even if you're not going to use it, it has it. A pen, good battery life, amazing display, great cameras. It has whatever you need, whatever you think about in a phone, it has it. And that's what I love about this. Like this is a phone you invest money into because it's expensive. And it's a phone that I feel like it's gonna last a lot of people for years before even needing to upgrade, just because the features of this are really good. Now I will say some of the new changes that are rumored for the S24 Ultra are not a lot. Like for instance, they're going with a titanium bezel, which will help reduce the weight because this is a heavier phone. Also, they're completely flattening out the edges, which is what I personally want. I feel like when your edges are flat, it makes typing easier, it makes holding it easier, and it also makes writing on it easier. So that's a good change too. But besides that, I don't think you're going to see a lot of new updates. So if you've just bought this phone, you truly have nothing to get jealous about. Like, just enjoy your phone, because every time I pick this thing up, I'm reminded exactly how good this phone is. Anyways, that wraps up my 1 year look on the S23 Ultra. Let me know how you're enjoying yours in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.